Hey everyone, my name is Bryan Soltis. I'm the Technical Evangelist at Kentico, and I'm here with MVP Bryan McKeiver at Bizsteam, and we decided we'd do a live recording of an interview where we're going to talk about MVC. Because, Bryan, you know a few things about MVC, I'm guessing, right?
Well, I think so. It's been a few years, but yeah, yes, we pretty much use it every day at Bizsteam.
As you may know, with Kentico 12, we're going to be releasing a ton of new MVC functionality, and we're really hoping that that development platform takes off. So we wanted to make this video to help you as a development shop transition into using MVC as your main development model. Bryan and his team at Bizsteam have a ton of experience doing that, and so I thought he'd be a great person to ask a few questions to, and he was kind enough to do so, although I did bring him to the beach to do so.
Of course. Well, and it's not just that you guys at Kentico are excited about it. We, as the partners, Bizsteam and others that I've talked to around the country, are super excited too, because it's a whole new capability that comes with Kentico 12, with Page Builder and doing the widgets how we want to do them, and it's something that it really kind of brings MVC into the first-class citizen that it should be in today's web world.
Exactly. Well, let's find out a little bit more. So tell me a little bit about Bizstream's journey, because you haven't always done MVC, right?
Right. Well, actually, funny enough, pretty much started in classic ASP using Visual InterDev. So there's something for you guys out there.
That's what I started with as well.
Yeah.
I think that's why we get along.
Then moved into regular ASP.NET web forms. Started even in the 1.0 beta, I think. 1.1, 2.0, all that kind of good stuff. So I've actually have probably 10 years plus experience on just web forms. And that's probably what originally attracted me to Kentico as a platform, because it did a really good job with that. And it made it easy to use. But in the last 5 or 6 years, MVC has really kind of taken over in the solutions that our clients want to have and how we build it. And really, our technicians at the shop, the developers that want to build .NET solutions using the latest and greatest technology, they're going to want to do that in MVC and maybe even in .NET Core in the future. But it's not web forms anymore. It really is something that we basically decided 2.5 years ago. This has got to be the future for us. We want to get ahead of the curve. And I'm not going to lie, there is a little bit of a learning curve. Mm-hmm. If you are a traditional .NET shop and you only did web forms, there's some things you're just going to have to learn. And we had to go through that. We started with Kentico 9, actually. It was our first real large MVC implementation.
Which is when we redid our MVC framework. We kind of wiped out what was there and we rebuilt it as the foundation for what is now even going into Kentico 12. So you guys actually started with us when we first started with our new MVC framework. That's when you guys started your MVC journey as well?
Right. And at that point, it was pretty much the two different independent sites, the main Kentico admin tool, which is now we lovingly refer to as the mother, and then the MVC Live site that you connected the two solutions together and you made it happen. And at that point, a lot of it was on our own in the 9.0 world. We had to build all of the code that did many of the things that you need to do. But it's awesome because as each version of Kentico has come out, 10, 11, now 12, the platform team and the product management team has really listened to our feedback at Bizsteam and a few other partners that are doing MVC as well, and they've added in features that we need along the way. So originally, you couldn't really do e-commerce and online marketing. Then 10 came out. Then 11. They've added those things. They've even added the page builder, which allows us to give marketing users the ability to make really friendly, drag and droppable landing pages that they need to on those MVC sites.
I would think that has to be a feature that makes MVC much more appealing from a development shop's perspective. The ability to still give that drag and drop capability to a non-technical person, but you get to still control the framework of MVC where you get all the benefits of the separation of concerns, and so your designers and your developers can all work in parallel.
Right. It's really helped us really put a process in place for how we want to build a site at Bizsteam and use the latest tools and not have to worry about, well, here's the way that you need to do it in the CMS space, which is what a lot of other CMSs would do. But now we're actually open and free to kind of say, no, here's the Bizsteam process. Here's the way we want to build things. We want to use NuGet packages to make reusable solutions for our clients. That's all possible now with MVC, and it's awesome to have that creativity. But really, the thing is, fast forward a couple of years to 2018, and we've built probably 5 or 6 major websites that are implemented in MVC. And we've learned some things along the way, but we've also found that using the MVC methodology has made our development team much, much happier. They basically don't feel like they're fighting anything anymore. Like, the way web forms generate markup on a page is not necessarily SEO friendly. It's not accessible. It's not lightning fast because it injects things that you don't necessarily want or can't control all the way. And there's always this question about how can I control that if I'm someone that wants to make open graph tags or accessible forms on a website. Where in MVC, it's something that you can just craft exactly character for character the way you want it,
the
and
exact layout.
Not have to worry about anything getting in the way.
So that's quite a journey that you guys have made. And again, you said you did actually start on the Kentico 9. So it's an impressive journey that a lot of our partners haven't made yet. So I'm sure you guys have learned a lot along that path. So as a development partner, why would I want to look at MVC? Why? You actually kind of said a little bit already, but why would you really want to look at it? What are the benefits that will bring me as a development company?
Sure. Well, it's interesting to answer that question. Why would an agency who maybe has been in the web forms world or even in other technology worlds want to do MVC in Kentico? And I really want to answer that in two different major categories because I think there's so much to that question. The first category is maybe the business reasons why. If you're an agency, does it make sense from a financial standpoint, a timeline standpoint, a complexity standpoint to do all that? And I'll answer that. The second category is the technical reasons that the developers are going to bring up, right? Because the developers could want to use whatever they want to use, but if we can't sell that and make successful projects with it, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So that's why I think you got to consider both sides. And the business reason really kind of comes down to, I have had an experience at Bizsteam for 16 years. The number one hardest challenge is finding talent. Finding good people, good developers that fit the culture, that do the things that you want them to do and actually are very skilled at developing.
Well, I can tell you after talking to partners around the world, you are not alone.
Yes, I know. And then not only finding them is a challenge, but retaining them, making sure that they are happy over a long period of time. I'm not talking about retaining them over like 8 months. I'm talking about retaining them over like 6, 7, 8 years. And one of the things that we have learned is what will frustrate a developer who maybe is a great fit in your company, loves the culture, is a good team player, high performer. What will kill that success with them is having them stagnate on a technology. So in a way, web forms and the Kentico portal engine is built on that. No fault of Kentico's. It's just the way web forms works. But web forms is pretty much an obsolete technology at this point, I think Microsoft might even say.
It's certainly being shown the door.
Right. It's being shown the door. They're still slightly updating here and there. But it's nowhere on tech blogs, conferences, GitHub repos. It's just not the way people generate samples. It's not the way they generate add-ons. It's not the way the community is going. So when a developer really sees that, oh, all this new stuff, all the leading stuff is MVC. Why are we not doing MVC? Why are we still doing this old legacy web form stuff? And really, if you don't give them opportunity to learn the new thing and kind of make the developers happy, you're going to have that developer leave. And it's exactly what happened to Bizsteam.
Wow.
We put 3 or 4 years investment into growing a developer who was pretty green and pretty young early on to being very competent in Kentico. I mean, really good in Kentico. 3 or 4 years of our time, our training, our resources, and our investment into that. The person was a great fit. They made all of our events happen. We really liked this person. They liked us. They was a good team player. And basically, after that 3rd or 4th year, I think it was the 3rd year, they just quit.
Wow.
And when we did an exit interview, it was 2 reasons. One, they wanted to travel more, which I can't fault them. We live in Michigan. There's a lot of snow. It's not fun. But the second big reason was they literally said the words, I can't stand working on Kentico web forms anymore.
Really? So it's not even probably Kentico. It was this web forms.
Right.
They just didn't.
I can't do web forms. I don't want to do life cycle models. I don't want to do all these old things. I'm tired of fighting it. I'm tired of it being slow. And as a business owner, when you invest all that time and money into someone, you're like, yes, we finally had success. We beat this challenge of recruiting talent and finding talent. And then to have them just leave because of the job.
Right. That's got to be.
That's a killer.
Yeah.
It's just, and at that moment, we basically really said, stop, wait, we have to fix this because we can't have this again, because that's a lot of money to just kind of have walk out the door. And I'm sorry, I don't want to talk about it in terms of resources are pure money, but at the end of the day, we are in business.
It's a services company, and you have to have people to perform those services. But you also mentioned what about the technical aspect too? You said about the technical part.
Right. So The technical aspect is interesting as well because, again, as technology marches on, as you want to do certain things, you really need to control it. And the big first reason is accessibility. It's such a big deal. Internationally, it's pretty much law that websites need to be accessible. And here in the U.S., especially in the last 3 years, more and more cases have come up that people want accessible websites. And I think maybe even like Domino's got sued because their Domino's.com isn't accessible.
Wow.
Right? To do that in web forms is tough.
Yeah.
Right? Automatically out of the box.
For years, people just didn't in the U.S.
It just doesn't happen. In MVC, it's much easier. You can control that form layout exactly the way you need to provide that service. And so having something that helps us do that quicker, again, as a business, that's better for us. We can be more profitable, provide better solutions for our clients. Mm-hmm. But then it's more than just that, right? It gets into, as we add on technologies like open graph tags for sharing rich content across LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. It's just so easy in MVC because you can control it all.
Because you have much more access on a more functional level or a base level that it probably is much easier to integrate it into other systems, which are based on MVC and those kinds of models too. So it's all Web API runs everything, and so it's probably much easier to do that.
And it's a de facto standard right now, but building sites responsive that are fast on a phone also super important.
Right.
And MVC, that's much easier. You don't have all the view state bloat and crazy JavaScript injected things that web forms gives you without even really knowing it until you view source and you're like, what is all that stuff? So having clean, fast, mobile optimized pages, also very important for solutions these days. And then really the nail in the coffin was when Google released accelerated mobile pages, or Google AMP. The first version of AMP basically said you're literally not allowed to have a form tag.
It's kind of a killer for web forms, a little bit.
The name of the tag in the name of the technology goes against the idea of not having a form tag. So that was like technically the requirements and the new things that are coming out, they don't line up with a technology that's maybe being sunsetted or obsolete or put into pasture, if you will.
Right. So
whereas the new stuff you can.
It certainly sounds like there's extremely compelling reasons on all sides of a business, from the business aspect to the technical aspect to retaining talent, setting yourself up for the future, that really come into play and should be driving people to consider MVC as their development model moving forward.
Right.
So if I was a development company and I wanted to transition to MVC, let's say I'm Bizsteam 3 years ago. I have done web forms my entire business existence. I'm doing Kentico primarily as my main development now using Portal method. I know I need to go to MVC. Where do I even begin? What are the main areas I need to look at or need to start addressing?
Yeah, it's funny. You're not the only one who's ever asked me that question.
I'm sure.
A couple other partners out there have reached out. It's funny. Anytime that you're shifting technology and maybe learning something new, there's always what's the best way to do it, or how do I kind of actually go about this? And my immediate response is, well, pick a project and do it. Don't pick the hardest project that you have to do. Maybe pick your own website or pick a marketing site that's somewhat simple to have a good real world thing that you actually need to get done. I'm not talking about creating a Hello World website. It's a real project, right? So treat it like a real project. It's got a budget. Don't try to pretend and make something that you're never going to use because you won't treat it for real, right? So once you have that project picked out, what we did at Bizsteam is we got lucky. One of our long-term employees actually has had quite a bit of MVC experience outside of our Kentico project space.
Always handy.
And that's kind of nice that he had some of that built in. And we had all of our other, say, 19 of the 20 developers were web forms developers. So basically, one at a time, we said, we'll bring one web forms developer into the MVC project. They'll learn underneath our main MVC architect, and they'll develop together as a team, along with the project manager, the QA person, the front end developer. And we'll bring that team together when we'll do a project.
Did you keep let's say, so you basically had one really experienced developer. Did that person continue to be the instructor, or did anybody you brought in to learn from him have the ability to show others what they learned, or was it a combination of both?
Well, not right away, right?
Only because the reason I asked that is, as a development company, that could significantly impact your ability to propagate this knowledge. If it's only one person that's able to do it, then that means that person has to have time to be scheduled with each one.
I mean, it's true. That person is really good, so it's hard to just replicate that automatically. But basically, we did the first developer in actually 2 projects. So that way they could get 2 experiences in 2 different domains and try to kind of, what's repeatable? What's the pattern?
Mm-hmm.
Once we did that, that person actually was in charge of creating some of the reusable components as NuGet packages.
Okay.
So that way, the next person on the 3rd project, we actually kind of started splitting that. The main MVC guy, who was our architect, he brought in a new web forms developer, went off in one direction on a project, and then the person who had done 2 MVC projects, we brought in another web forms
So
developer.
you were able to build your own little pyramid scheme of
Right.
knowledge transfer. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is obviously how a company would have to do it to scale if they wanted to transition their entire team. You would have to
Right.
have those capabilities, and you need to grow them within your team as well.
But the key there is, along the way, we stopped after each project was done and said, what is reusable across the projects? Because if we had to write it from scratch each time, there's a lot more code in an MVC solution than there ever was in a Portal Engine solution.
Well, it's kind of, I always liken it to going all the way back to like the ASPX model with
Right.
Kentico, in which you're basically doing your entire layout. And that's really how it is. Now with version 12, you're going to have the ability to drag and drop a page builder so that
Right.
people can still put components on there. But before version 12, you're right, it is a ton more code and a lot more that someone's physically having to put on the file itself.
But with MVC, it's a lot easier to make reusable components. It's a lot easier to just add a NuGet package that has your base stuff in it. From maybe the back-end structure of how you make a menu system. Like, that's the classic first thing that you're going to reuse across different websites. Almost every website wants to have top navigation, utility navigation, where the login button is at the very top, and then footer navigation. Those 3 areas are the first place that we made reusable components to allow us to sort of reap the benefits of, yeah, it was this investment here, but now every project after that, we don't have to do that investment. It's ready for us.
Gotcha.
And don't get me wrong, there's definitely a learning curve and really, some cost if you're an agency to going down this path. And we felt it. But I guess over time, we're now reaping the benefits, if you will, because we have more reusable components. And we're hoping that we're actually at the end of paying off the original investment within a year or 2 process.
And I guess I was going to ask you the question of how long should someone expect it, but it's obviously going to be different for everybody.
Yeah.
But in your guys' case, you said it's about a year and a half this transition has been for you. But at this point, are you 100% capable of doing only MVC development moving forward?
Yeah, I would say 95% of our projects at Bizsteam are MVC in
Wow.
Kentico. There are 5% that are still Portal, and that's only where, you can't force a client into working 2 different ways. So
Right.
if they're already heavily invested in the Portal engine in Kentico 11, we are not going to try to lead them down the next mini site you do, let's do that all in MVC. Does it make
Right.
sense to maintain 2 different ways of doing your websites in our eyes? I'm sure maybe someone out there wants to do it that way, but for us, it's if they already have a big investment, if their developers are already very versed in Kentico Portal Engine, we're not going to push them and force them into it. But if you're new to Kentico and you like the admin tool, you like the power of the content management system, MVC is the way to go for sure in our eyes.
So, and this is going to be one last question because I'm just a little curious. You have a guy who happens to be great at MVC. My company, we don't have anybody who's great at MVC. Do you have any tips or guidance? Like, should I try to find someone who's great at MVC? I guess look into training to try to... I would maybe think that I would need to champion someone within my organization who I thought would have the capability to grasp this new technology and be able to teach others and maybe champion that one person to do it. Would you kind of recommend that approach, or is there some other...
Well, it's interesting because I would say go try to find someone who has a ton of web forms experience these days with the page lifecycle model. You're not going to find that either.
Yeah.
What you are going to find as you interview new developers in 2018, 2019 is they're going to know MVC only. They're not going to know web forms. So I think you're going to see a shift in your recruitment and in your talent processes. But if you literally aren't at a point where you want to hire in the talent, really there's a ton of great resources at Pluralsight. That's the first place that we actually even tell our current developers to hone their MVC skills and improve them.
Okay.
I would definitely get a Pluralsight subscription. There are so much content on that site of how to do this, how to do that, how to do routing in MVC, how to do Razor views. It's there. Also, learn.asp.net has a ton of free resources. And I think there's maybe you might know this. Microsoft University, I believe, is another.
Right. Yeah. It's like their training.
Learn.microsoft.com.
Yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm. There's certainly a lot of information. Channel 9. There's a ton of online resources there. So I think your just recommendation is just find as much as you can, and get someone up to speed on it. So I think it's very clear that there's a lot of benefit to be had with MVC, and I think it is a tough transition, or it could be perceived as a tough transition. But from what I can tell looking in, and from your commentary, is that it can be a tough transition if you don't have the right components in place, and you may have some growing pains to get there. But it's really the only way that you can go. That's where the evolution, that's where technology is moving, that's where developers are moving. That's the only way you're going to retain talent. You have to be able to let them develop on things they like to develop in. And so as an organization, you really need to be thinking about MVC, because that's the future. Which is why at Kentico, that's why with version 12, that's why we put so much effort into it. We recognize this is where the shift is going as well, and we put in as much capability, and we're going to continue to add more to it, because we want it to be as capable of a platform on MVC as it was on Portal, if at all possible. So we recognize that's where you guys need to go, and we want to help you guys get there.
Well, and even think about it this way. The next thing is .NET Core and MVC Core. Right. All the work that you will do to move to MVC right now is going to help you on the next jump. So if you were to look way into the future, the stuff you're doing now to transition is going to set you up to succeed in that far future as well.
Excellent point. Well, I want to thank you, Bryan. You've given us a ton of information. I know the guidance people, a lot of people in the industry look up to you. A lot of the Kentico community, you're an MVP. You're so willing to be helpful to others and kind of give this information. This is a lot of stuff you need to think about if you're developing shop. I mean, this is a transition that's coming, and it's actually already happening. And hopefully a lot of the stuff Bryan told you today will be very helpful in guiding you on your journey. And it'll also give you a little bit of insight into why we're adding the capabilities and we're promoting certain things inside of Kentico 12 that we are, is because we also recognize that MVC is the future of development. It's the future of Kentico development, and we want to help you get there the best way that we can. So I want to thank you, Bryan, for your time, and let's get back to the beach. We're at a conference.